We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara in Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 5b. The Gemara here continues the drasha of Bar Kapara. If a person hears something that's inappropriate, yaniach etzbo ba'aznav, he should take his fingers, and his fingers again is like the peg of the pasuk, the yased, and he should put it ba'aznav. Again, this was a drasha from Azeinecha, that it's a reference to the ears. He should put his fingers in his ears, and that way he will not hear this inappropriate comment. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. V'hainu damar Rabbi Elazar, that's what Rabbi Elazar said. Mivnei ma etzba'osav shel adam domos liyasedos. Why is it that the fingers of a person are similar to pegs? And the Gemara says, my time, and what's the reason? Meaning, what are you referring to when you say they're like yasedos, they're like pegs? Ilay mishum de mechalkon. If you're going to say that he's referring to the fact that they're each distinct and they're not attached to one another, they have distinct uses. The mechalkon kol chada v'chada lemilsei avida. Each one is actually made for its particular use. The Yomar Mar, because the master said, zu zeres, zu kamitza, zu ama, zu etzba, zu godel. Again, we'll see in a moment Rashi, but there are different halachas that pertain to every single finger. Rashi over here says, first, yaniach etzbo, shi shafuya kiyased. Again, it's kind of curved like a peg, so the idea is we're darshaning to put the finger in the person's ear. My time, kolam Rabbi Mai domos kiyasedos. The Gemara is asking, what does Rabbi Elazar mean that they're similar to these pegs? Inema de mechalkon shemechulako zumizu ve'enon mechubaros yachad. If he's referring to the fact that they're distinct from one another, they're not attached to one another. Chada lemil, say each one is for its own use. Kushi, this is actually a question. Kalachas yesh bat sorech, each one has a particular use. V'af b'tzarchi gavoa, and that's even true when it comes to tzarchi gavoa, things that have to do with shamayim, they each have their own use. So in other words, that's obvious why they're mechalkon, why they are separate one from the other. And then the Gemara goes through each use. Zu zeres, this one is the span, that's referring to the pinky. Min hakatana modedin zeres shel choshen, from the pinky, you actually measure, you use that to measure the span of the choshen. Zu kamitza, then the next one is the kamitza, that's what we call the ring finger. Me'etzba she'etzel haktana, the one that's next to the pinky. Maschilin likmots, that's the beginning of the kamitza process. When you do kamitza, take the fistful by a carbon mincha. Chofe shalosh etzbos al pas yado hakamitza v'ha'ama v'etzba v'kometz. Again, that's how you take the kamitza using that finger in terms of taking up the carbon mincha. Zu ama, the ama refers to the middle finger. Me'hagadola moded in amas binyan v'amas kalim. You actually measure the measure of an amma in terms of the binyan beis hamikdash and the kalim of the beis hamikdash. You use that middle finger as part of that measurement. Zu etzba, and then the pointy finger, what's that used for? Lamatan domim shel chatos, that's used to sprinkle the blood of carbon chatos. Tichsibei be'etzbo, it uses the word be'etzbo. And zagodel, what's the thumb for? Leboin yad the Aaron of the mitzorah. So the thumb was used by Aaron, and it was also used by the mitzorah. Again, those were also processes of the beis hamikdash. So the point is, each one has its use. That's why they're distinct from one another. And even with things that have to do with milsa d'shmaya, things that have to do with something to do with heavenly matters, for that also they are distinct. And so the Gemara says, rather, the question of Rabbi Elazar was as follows: Elamata meshupos kiyasedos. His question was much more simple. Why is it that they're curved the same way as pegs? And we'll say the same thing as we said before. Shem yishma adam davar she'eino hagon. If a person hears something that's not appropriate, yaniach etzba'osav bi'oznav, he's able to put his fingers into his ears. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. Tana devei Rabbi Shmuel, it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel. Mivnei ma ozen kula kasha. Why is the whole ear hard? V'yo'al yaraka, but the earlobe is soft. Shem yishma adam davar she'eino hagon. That way, if somebody hears something that's not appropriate, yachuf al yelasoche, he can bend the earlobe into it. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Al Yashmiya Adam Liyaznav Devarim B'Telim. A person should not listen to things that are Devarim B'Telim, things that are useless words, Mipnei Shein Nichvos Tchila, because it's the ears that become scorched first, Le'Varim, from the other limbs. In other words, they're very sensitive to these things. Same basic idea. Again, a person shouldn't hear things that are not appropriate. Rashi over here says, Nichvos Tchila Le'Varim, Rakos V'Dakos Lichvos Mikulam. They're the softest, they're the thinnest, they're the most sensitive, and they're the ones that are the first to get burned, so to speak. And the Gemara continues, they had the following question. Ma'u livol betchila b'Shabbos. Is it allowed to have the first act of relations on Shabbos? Rashi over here says, Ma'u livol betchila lo shmielu hach masnisa de la'el. This question, the people asking the question, did not hear the brisa earlier, which said it was prohibited. Inam ishmielu, or you could say they did hear that brisa, so miboilu halacha vein halacha. But they're asking, is that the halacha, or is it not the halacha? Is this mutter or not? And the Gemara explains the various sides of the question. Da mifkat paket. On the one hand, we could say that the blood blood is kind of in a separate pouch, so to speak. O chibure mechbor, maybe it's considered to be attached. The Rashi over here says we're talking here about the blood of the besulim, mifkad pocket, kemo pikadon, meaning to say like you have a deposit. Konus v'omid, it's like gathered somewhere. Ve'eno nivla bedofnei harechem. The point is, it's not absorbed in the walls of the rechem of the womb. Lios yitzias de chabura. So therefore, when that blood comes out, it's not really a wound. The question is, are you actually making a wound, or are you just releasing this blood that is kind of separate from the walls of the womb? Elasha pesach nol b'fanav. It's like there's a door closed over there. Uposchen loviyot, saying the act of relations opens the door and then it comes out. O chibure mechbar dam besulim, or maybe no, it's all attached. Hayotzel de chabura, meaning to say it comes out through a wound to basha adofen misparak mechever, because again the wall is going to, so to speak, break apart and create a wound. So that's the question of the Gemara, and the Gemara continues. Vim tim salomar, and if you will say dam mifkat pocket, let's say you say it's dam mifkat pocket, let's say you say it's not really a chabura, but still we have a question. Ladam hutzarech v'shari, do we say that the requirement, what he's trying to get, is the blood, and therefore it is permitted? O dilma lepesach hutzarech, no, maybe he's really having kavanah to make an opening, to make a pesach v'aser, and that would actually be aser. Rashi over here says, Im tim salomar mifkat pocket v'yein bo mishum chabura. If you're going to say there's no problem of chabura, kavanas hamotzio lemai, but what is the person who's taking out the blood thinking? What's his kavana? Ladam hutzarech u'miskavin lotzio v'shari da mifkat pocket. Is he thinking about getting out the blood, which would be permitted because it's mifkat pocket? O dilma lepesach miskavin, maybe he's thinking about creating a pesach in this woman. V'areu kebinyan v'aser, that should be considered like building, and then that would be considered aser. And the Gemara continues, Vim tim salom, and if you're going to say ladam hutzarech, that what's required, what he needs is really the blood, upesach memela kasi, and the pesach is just coming memela, it's not his primary objective, but still we have a question. Halacha Rabbi Shimon, do we say the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon, do amar davar shem miskavin mutter? He says that something that's not really your intention, if you do it, it's mutter. So here, if he makes a pesach, but that's not really his intention, it won't be a problem, it's mutter. Oh, or halacha Rabbi Yehuda, maybe the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Do amar davar shem miskavin aser, Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says that a davar shem miskavin is aser, and so then this would be problematic. And even if you're going to say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, and it should be aser as a davar shem miskavin, but still, mekalkel hu eitz pesach, maybe this is considered to be mekalkel in terms of the creation of the pesach, meaning to say it's considered to be a destructive act. Or misaken hu eitz pesach, or maybe it's considered to be misaken, meaning to say it is a constructive act, and again, a destructive act would be mutter, but something that's constructive would be aser. And the Gemara has another version, Ika Diamri, some have the version of the question as follows, V'yim tim salomar dam chibure mechbar, go the other way. If you're going to say that this really is a chabura, ledam hutzarech v'aser, so does he want the dam and then it's aser? O dilma lahanos atzmo hutzarech v'shar, maybe he's only thinking about hana of getting pleasure, his own pleasure, and therefore again it's davar shein miskavin, and it should be permitted. V'yim tim salomar lahanos atzmo hutzarech, and if you're going to say he's thinking about his own hana, v'dam memela ka'asi, and the blood is just coming out memela, and again according to this version it is a wound, so halacha Rabbi Yehuda is the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda, the davar shein miskavin is going to be aser. O halacha Rabbi Shimon, or is the halacha like Rabbi Shimon, the davar shein miskavin is mutter. V'im tim salom, or halacha Rabbi Yehuda, then if you're going to say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, the davar shein miskavin is aser. Mekalkel bechabura, is this a destructive act in terms of the wound? O mesakin bechabura, or is this a constructive act? O mesakin bechabura, or is it considered a constructive act in terms of the wound? V'im tim salom, or mekalkel bechabura, and if you're going to say it's considered a destructive act, but mekalkel halacha Rabbi Yehuda, when it comes to mekalkel, is the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda? And we'll take a look at a few Rashis over here. First of all, Rashi says halacha Rabbi Yehuda b'davar shein miskavin v'yasser. The Gemara again in the first version where we're talking about dam mifkat pocket said is the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda by davar shein miskavin and it's aser. O Rabbi Shimon mutter, or is it like Rabbi Shimon and it's mutter? And Rashi asks, Vim Tomer, if you're going to ask the following question, psik reisha v'lo yamasu, this is really a psik reisha, you're for sure going to create the Pesach, and Rabbi Shimon says davar shein miskavin by psik reisha is a problem. Haparchinan lo lekamon, that question is going to be asked later on. Umeshaninan, and we're going to answer as follows. Yesha bekin b'hataya. Some people are experts when it comes to this act of relations in terms of tilting themselves, so to speak. V'yein dam yotze, and it's possible that the blood will not come out. V'yafein pesach niftach, and it's possible that the doorway will not open, so to speak. Hilkach la psik reisha v'lo yamasu. Therefore, it is not a psik reisha. And then the Gemara said, V'im tim solomar halacha Rabbi Yehuda akati yikol limiboy dekaim lon kiyam Rabbi Yehuda b'mesakein afal b'mekalkel eina malacha. Even if the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, but if it's destructive, it would not be a malacha. Rashi points out, Now he says you could ask about this Pesach, is it a tikkun, is it constructive, or is it destructive? Why would it be considered one or the other? Because a besula really is considered better than a beula. A woman who's a virgin has a certain, chashivas over a beula, a woman who had relations, so in that sense, maybe it's a kilkel, maybe it's destructive. And then on this one, you don't have the girsa of, if you say it is mekalkel, to im mekalkel l'divrei hakol mutter, because if it's mekalkel, in this first version by Dam Mifkat Pocket, everyone would agree it's mutter, she'ein lach mekalkel chayev, because there's nobody that says mekalkel is chayev, ela chovel u'maver aliba de Rabbi Shimon. The only exception is by a wound or by a fire, according to Rabbi Shimon, by chovel and mavir, so that's mekalkel chayev according to Rabbi Shimon. However, v'hachalav chovelu, here we're going in the, this is in the first version, where it's not considered chovel, it's not a wound, because this line of the Gemara is talking about Dam Mifkad Pocket. Now in the second version, you have a situation of the Chabura being made without Kavana. Again, the halacha is it like Rabbi Yehuda by Davar Shem Miskavin, and maybe it's constructive and it's considered Aser. Or halacha Rabbi Shimon, the Davar Shem Miskavin mutter. Maybe the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon, that Davar Shem Miskavin is mutter. Even if the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda by Davar Shem Miskavin, kilkul hu mutter, is it considered destructive and mutter? Or is it considered constructive and it's Aser? Now, even if it's a situation of destructive in this version, meaning when we're talking about the fact that it's a chabura, there is a possibility that it's Aser in this second version. When we're talking about the fact that it's chovel, it could even be Aser if it's destructive. In bedavar shein miskavin, how could that be? In bedavar shein miskavin svirolon kreb Yehuda. Let's say we hold like Rabbi Yehuda by something that's davar shein miskavin, uve mekalkel bechabura, but we can also hold by mekalkel by chabura, by destructive, by a wound, svirolon kreb Shimon the mechayev. Maybe we hold like Rabbi Shimon that you're chayev. The amrin kol mekalkel and patur and chutz mi chovel u'mavir. That's what Rashi just said earlier. Mekalkel is always patur except for chovel and mavir. V'ukimna Rabbi Shimon beparak Oregon. That follows Rabbi Shimon, who has the exception of chovel and mavir. And so that's the Gemara said at the end, when it comes to, if you're going to say it's mekalkel bechabura, by mekalkel, is the halacha Rabbi Yehuda by mekalkel umutter? Is the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda by mekalkel and it's mutter? T'chiyama Rabbi Yehuda davar shem miskavin asur by misakin, because the idea would be Rabbi Yehuda only says davar shem miskavin is asur by misakin, by constructive, aval by mekalkel lo amar. But if it's destructive, he did not say that. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Vav Amud Aleph.